Poetry Flash reading series. I'm Joyce Jenkins, Poetry Flash editor and director, beaming to you from Poetry Flash in Berkeley. Today we are pleased to present a reading by Lyndon Norton and Norman Fischer. This reading is co-sponsored by Moe's Books in Berkeley. You can purchase the featured books online at bookshop.org/lists, LISTS/poetry-flash, FLASH-readings. And for Norman Fischer's, there was a clattering as, please go to small press distribution, spdbooks.org. Like I said, these links will be in the chat box. You are muted on entry. Please don't unmute yourselves during the reading so that we can hear from our amazing poets. To share your thoughts during the reading, please use the chat box. This meeting is being recorded and will be on the Poetry Flash Facebook page and YouTube channel. At the end, after the recording is stopped, we'll keep the Zoom on for a few minutes so those who are joining us live can ask a question of our poets or say hello. Please visit poetryflash.org to see our homage to Michael McClure, news about the upcoming Northern California Book Awards, and much, much more. To sign up for our email list, go to poetryflash.org and scroll to join our mailing list. Here's Richard Silberg, Poetry Flash Associate Editor, who will introduce today's poets.
Hi everyone.
Richard.
This is a really pleasurable reading. They all are, but I'm really up for this reading. Our two readers are going to be Lyndon Norton and Norman Fischer. And one of the things that's really interesting about this reading is how different what they're doing is, because Linda is doing a poem, memoir, which essentially features an ego, although I'm gonna back off that in a moment. But Norman, who is a Zen Buddhist priest, and anything I say about Buddhism, Norman, please feel free to correct me, because I am no Buddhist expert. But in Buddhism, there isn't any real ego. The ego is an illusion. So we've got illusions in an exciting bounce off today. Now, to back off the ego part, Linda's book is anything but an egotistic or egoistic book. It's really a very complex book. It's very wonderfully pleasurable and direct to read, but it's doing really many different things. There's a family galaxy. There's a Sicilian father, a Sicilian mother and an Irish father, who are very damaging parents, really. They're 5 siblings, of whom one dies, one goes to a mental hospital, one who Linda suggests is the one shining success, although I personally think she's a pretty good shiner there too. But so there's a family galaxy. There's very complex white-black relation, extremely interesting in so many different ways. The parents are racist. Linda is fascinated and thinks through a lot of things. She's got, among other things, an affair with August Wilson, who is never totally named, just called August, but we know who he is. And then there's poetry, her poetry, a lot of wonderful literary references. The book is full of found poems of wit. So this is really a delicious book. And we're delighted to have her here to read from it. Let's give her a warm welcome, Lyndon Norton.
Thank you, Richard. You're so good to all of us. I remember the introduction for my last book, the last reading we did with Mose. It was maybe 10 years ago. You really made me think much better of myself. As you know, Richard, it's 20% poetry and 80% prose, the book. But even the prose is poetic and the poems are prosy. And there's so much stuff in this book that you could give me any holiday and I could choose selections to read for that particular holiday. So I am focusing today on Father's Day. And I just want to say one thing, that I do focus on the individual racism of, I would say, people in my family, but I'm calling into you today from Boston. I'm at Julie Carr's and Tim Roberts' house, and I've spent the week with Fanny, and I'm really talking in the book about the whole climate of working class white racism that I grew up in, and the fact that it's not, I end up learning that it's not class-based, it's systemic, and it's everywhere in the culture. So I just want to clarify that. So I'm thanking Norm. Can everybody see me? Because I'm looking at my own document right now on my screen. I'm thanking Norman so much for being my teacher and my friend. And I'm thanking Joyce and Richard, who are so generous and always have been. And because it's Father's Day, and because I'm with Fanny this week, I'm also going to suggest that you read Manimal, Fanny's new book from Arrowsmith Press, which is documentary, memoir, and has a lot of art in it, including some of mine. And it's as all Fanny's work is, it says more in a shorter form than most people say, in 500 pages. So please take a look at that. Maybe Joyce, maybe you could put that in the chat or something. And I'm dedicating this reading to George Floyd and his daughter, Jana, and in memory of Erica Garner. And starting with an epigraph from Chester Himes. It ain't so much what the music says, it's what you can't do about it. I'm going to read short prose selections, but I'll start, instead of with a land acknowledgement, I'll share a Massachusetts poem since I'm reading here. This is also an AIDS poem, since some characters in the picture in this poem, my brother and our friend Paul, didn't survive that epidemic. And I'm dedicating this poem to Amanda, Janet, and Claudia, my little girlfriends who I spent the day with yesterday. It's called Stain. Salada, Lipton, red rose, dregs stain the paper, the color of the wampanoag, the parchment in the museum, where you learned a little about Indians. Wessagusset, now that's a beautiful word. The first printing of a Bible in the colonies was a translation into Massachusetts. Who now reads Massachusetts? We were sunning at Nantasket after Mass in Scituate, and a lunch of iced tea and sandwiches. We stretched out on the jetty and put clamshells over our eyelids. I have a Polaroid of us smiling, brown, white bassinet in the foreground. And everything else I'm reading comes from the journals, which is the format for the prose in both my books. And I'll delineate which year the sections come from. This comes from, and here we are in Oakland, and it's from the year 1997, What Mommies Say. When Isabel was an infant, she nursed a dozen times a day and was colicky. She screamed and I cried. I was sleep deprived, loving someone I couldn't please. But then when she was about 4 months old, things changed. I told Aaron, I don't understand. She really loves me. Aaron laughed and said, that's how it is with babies. They don't know any better. I took a day off to go on a field trip with Isabel and the other preschoolers. On the bus to Crab Cove, I was so happy. Isabel sat on my lap all the way there and Grace leaned on my arm. On the way home, I let Grace sit in my lap. This is the kind of work I'm good at. Isabel is at Russell Street. We call the houses by their street names, much better than saying Mommy's house and Daddy's house. Watching the 400 blows made the year I was born. Each time I cried, the narrator says, my father would imitate me on his fiddle. 2001, Transachieving. Oh, Mom, Isabel said tonight, Daddy had to come to school today to comb my hair. Why, did they find lice? I thought I'd gotten them all the last time I checked. No, but I had eggs in my bangs. Waiting in the lobby for the parent-teacher conference with Khadijah, the kindergarten teacher. Cold, gray day after cold, dark night. Marianne and Rod come downstairs from the classroom. They are beaming. Oh, isn't Khadijah wonderful? She's great, yes. Khadijah and I went out for drinks last week when our girls were with their fathers. In a school where all the teachers wear sensible shoes, Khadijah wears boots with spiked heels and gets down on the floor with the kids. We all love Khadijah. But this epidemic of lice, Marianne says. Oh, it's terrible, I say, scratching my head. Big-boned Marianne clutches Rod's arm. He's a grinning patriot who loves George Bush and looks just like Al Gore. Marianne purrs. Rod and I check each other's hair for lice every night. I just don't know how you single mothers handle this alone. Yeah, I say, it's tough. She talks about their kitchen renovation and their upcoming vacation at a Mexican resort. She wears matching outfits and smells like air freshener. Imagine her pitying me for having no rod of my own. I smiled and nodded and went up to see Khadijah. And all day long, I nursed a grudge. I should have said, oh, it's okay, Marianne. These days, when Isabel's at her father's house for the night, I go down to Kingman's, I pick up some guy, and I tell him, take me from behind and check me for lice. Bad dream last week. My father grinning at me toothless. His God loves him, but who loves me? That day, he got all of his rotten teeth pulled in one afternoon at the VA. Every tooth in the top and bottom of his mouth. It was my job to help with his bloody gauze while he moaned. That was one of the few times I was ever alone with them without the other kids. Ma drove us home over the Mystic River Bridge. Dick, 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 she nagged. The dentist told you not to do it all at once. He couldn't afford to miss another day of work, and she knew that. Now he had to wait for his gums to heal before he could put in the dentures. He was 44. 2002. It's from the Founders of Nothing section, La Mala Femina. New job, lonely editorial work, but now I don't have to travel and I work in a research library. Databases galore, online censuses, maps, newspapers. I search the ruins of maiden names, and the stigma of my father's illegitimacy looms again. Is it pathetic to try to make meaning of all this chaos and shame? I feel like I'm a dog pawing at a grave, but I have this document, the social worker's report about my grandmother's case when she was indigent, unmarried, with child. My father in 1932 and 33. I pore over it. I search for birth and death certificates and graves, lost women and children, ghosts beckon in the ether. Googling, I learned that the Black Valley, where my father's mother grew up, was the last place in Ireland to get electricity in 1978. I go down to the stacks and borrow every book I can find about Kerry in the early 20th century and the Civil War there, at madness and women and illegitimacy in Ireland. A divorce is like a death, but instead of that inevitable end, the person that we love stands there as a living reproach of deep failure. John McGahern. 2004, The Innocency. Get Up Off of That Thing plays at the end of the movie Harriet the Spy. I tell Isabel that James Brown was the godfather of soul, and she says, who is the father? We don't know. Maybe soul, like my father, was the child of a musician passing through town, an illegitimate child. I wonder about the words for bastard in various cultures, the denotations and connotations. Confided in Gigi about the cascade of disaster and humiliation at work and home and everywhere in 1999, 2000, 2001, the truths about my divorce and my family that I never share. She couldn't understand why I was so ashamed. I resisted the urge to defend my parents, to talk about class. Your parents, frankly, are assholes, she said. She meant well, but I went home more depressed than if I'd said nothing at all. Isabel, away for 2 nights at her father's, comes back and sees me in my pretty new bra and underpants. Clearly hurt, she says, you never told me you bought those. I love her sense of ownership of my life, the sweetness, the intimacy. She's at a class sleepover at the Sands house. They're watching the World Series and running in and out of the house to witness the eclipse. I want the Red Sox to win for my father. Whatever he has done or not done, he's old and he's waited a lifetime for this. I'm sitting in Lucas watching the game, remembering the World Series in 1986 happening as Joey was dying. In the bar, pandemonium as the Red Sox win and people are congratulating me because I come from Boston. I laugh and lapse into my accent. I don't even think about it. I just dial home. And my father picks right up. For a moment, it doesn't matter that we haven't spoken for years. Jesus, he says, it's like a miracle. All my kids are calling me. I think even the dead one tried to call, but we had a bad connection. 2005, someone I used to know. My brother, Richard called from Boston last night. It's 1 o'clock here. My cab is the only one on the street at this time of night in Mattapan. What time is it there? He tells me that the government and God protect him. Police leave him alone because his brilliance is well known. If they stop him and go back to their cars and check their radios, they come back and let him go after learning about all the revenue he's generated through his inventions. Like the screen behind first base in baseball, he stops to catch his breath. I invented that. He stopped taking his medication. Behind the bravado, I hear the loneliness in his voice, his Boston accent thick and broad. I recognize it as my own. He says he had a dream about God. It wasn't Dad, he says, though he was wearing the same dark jacket and pants. He said he was protected. Said God, his God. I shuddered because now he sounds like my father. Will protect him even if it means killing the other person. Then he tells me about a war dream. Or is it a dream? The war is real. We are always at war now. He says he saw women begging God to stop the bombs from dropping from the sky. Women dressed like the Blessed Mother, but dusty. And they weren't virgins. And the bombs stopped. He has to stop talking for a minute to think about that. Whose side has gone on? He says. I know you're wondering. I've thought about that, and I have an answer. In California, the palms are wrestling in the dark. There are rats in the trees. This place is not all it's cracked up to be, but it's my victory. I'm 3,000 miles and 3 time zones away. I said, go ahead. Tell me about it, Richard. 2008, it's from a section called Johnny. I go to the dentist. She tells me that the crown I got a few years ago was badly done and should be replaced, and I should have a root canal. I went into debt for that crown, I say, and I'm still paying for it. Can't you just pull that tooth? It's in the back, no one will see it. Appalled, she explains to me that they never want to pull a tooth. Every tooth is precious. You could live till you're 95. You need to take the long view. I tell her I'll think about it. Marcus, who is my son, at that point in 2008, he had come into my life through the foster care system in Oakland. Marcus cracked a tooth when he had a nightmare and panic attack last week. His grandmother can't get time off work to take him to the dentist, so I said I'd do it. But first I had to make a lot of calls to get him a replacement Medi-Cal card. When he finally got it, we made a plan to meet at Western Dental downtown. He arrived on his skateboard. We waited a long time. When they finally called him in, he gave me his skateboard to hold. My meter was about to expire, so I ran out to put some coins in it. I had no idea how long we'd been at the clinic. It was at the clinic. In the street, people were smiling at me. Then I realized it was because I was an unlikely person to be walking around with his skateboard, which was painted with his tag, Juice. When I got back to the waiting room, there was a father with 2 little kids and a baby. People came in and out. I was the only white person in the room. Suddenly, Marcus appeared in a dental bib. He'd had a panic attack and broken his tooth. They want to pull 3 teeth. Should I let them? He asked me. I went back to talk to the dentist. Aren't teeth precious? Apparently his aren't. Medi-Cal won't pay for repairs. We decided that they should just pull the tooth he broke in his sleep and another one that is rotten. I went back to the waiting room. The TV was turned to Jerry Springer. The father with his kids watched me watching TV, trying, I think, to figure out what was up with me and Marcus, or whether I was trustworthy, which is the same thing. He needed to put coins in his meter. He asked me if I could watch his kids for a minute. Okay, I said, and I sat down to be of use. And coming to the end, 2014, Black Valley, Whiteface. My notebooks filled with memories of my parents. From the very beginning, it seems, the thing that interested me most was documenting them, trying to understand them. My father banging the side of his pipe against the porcelain toilet bowl. There were always tobacco flakes in the water, but if he saw evidence of menstrual blood in the bathroom, disgust and shame. And him sitting on the back steps in the dark on summer nights, listening to the Red Sox game on the transistor radio. His absolute loneliness, as if he weren't a member of our family and didn't want to be, because he had his beer and his God and didn't like us much. And at the beach, him running out into the water and crossing himself before diving into the waves. How tall and athletic and freckled he was. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, everybody, for coming. Happy Father's Day.
I had to rush to unmute myself. You caught me by surprise there, Linda. You popped right off. Thank you very, 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 very much. Our next reader is Norman Fischer, who we're very glad to have reading in our series again. He's read several times before. I also am personally glad that you seem to be a Giants fan. Norman, now, Norman, he's got a number of recent poetry. I'm not going to mention them. There are also titles, Buddhist titles. I just want to, because I don't want to bog us down with too much verbiage. I want to mention 2 books that might be of special interest. He's got a translation of the Hebrew Psalms that's of interest both to Christians and Jews. And he's got a book out in 2016. It's essays on thinking, writing, language, and religion. And let me just say, reading through his book, he seems to be an enormously learned man. And the book moves, it's a book length piece of writing that moves through time it's polymorphous, perverse. It's sometimes an I, it's sometimes a you, sometimes a he. He's got a section towards the late middle of the book on the mutual creation and need of God and man. The book is constantly critiquing ideas of how the world works and what it's all about, and leaves us thinking about that at great dizzying, at great dizziness, let me say. And it's full of language, vertiginous spills of language. At the same time, it is often putting down language as it sure spills out some sweet stuff. So let's give him a warm welcome, Norman Fischer.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Richard. When you were talking just now, you were a couple of times it froze, and I don't know if that was your internet problem or mine. So if, in case it was mine, I apologize in advance in case I might, be distorted or stop when I should be going. Anyway, that was great, Richard. I wish I could be at Moe's and see you in person saying all that. And I'm looking forward to when we get back to Moe's. And I'm grateful to Richard. Richard and Joyce are stalwarts of our poetry scene in the Bay Area. They are the greatest. And they've been keeping this flame alive all this time. And so I'm really, really grateful to both of them personally and to the institutions that they have taking care of all these years. And I'm really happy to be reading with Linda, who's a good friend, and Whiteout is a terrific, poignant book that just sort of tears your heart apart, as you got a taste of just now. Anyway, great to be here. Thank you so much for coming. Everybody's getting a little tired of being on Zoom, so I appreciate your turning out for this. So I'm going to read about a half an hour, and I'm actually going to read from a little bit from this book called Nature. The cover of this book is a photograph taken at our house on the day in the Bay Area when the sun never came out because the smoke from all the fires was so tremendous that it was orange light, weird orange light all day. So I'm going to read just a few pages from this just to give you a taste of this. Our son Noah just signed on Father's Day. How great. And happy Father's Day, by the way, to everybody here who's a father. From Nature. To perceive is to delight. To see a tree or sky is a great relief. To one who toils, it restores tone. The lawyer walks out of the courtroom and sees the faintly recalled sky distinctly there. And suddenly she is human and breaks the law. The health of the eye demands horizon. See far enough and you will see through doomed entanglement. But in after hours, there's nobody left. I see emotions inward, just as an angel does. Slender cloud, fishes in the sky, crimson curlicue. My dust churns with the morning wind. Nature is so inexpensive. Give me one healthy day without a world to think about. Forget everything. And dawn is Palm Beach. Sunset is Maui. Midnight is German philosophy, and 2 a.m. the British Museum. Conceptual shattering. Broken world. Gender and genre busting. A touch, an exhale. Eternal time and well-being ensue for a moment. Last evening's January sunset occurred in September. The western clouds divided into soft pink flakes, the air so sweet, it hurt to come indoors, where I lost the thread of their meanings. I noticed Shakespeare and Homer, H.D. and Gertrude Stein, equally nonplussed in their respective dark corners, swooning in concert. James Baldwin, Emily Dickinson, glancing askance at one another, treating each thing as if another, babbling. The leafless trees become spires of flame. With the blue of the sea for bowl, the fire sank queer in the west. Frost. Music. City people go to the country in summer or fall, but winter is best. Seasons that were eternally reappearing now materialize otherwise. The warmth of summer blazes, the chill of winter melts and disagrees, fall and spring alternate places. Our poetic metaphors do not hold up, so poems disintegrate. Nature's eternity proves temporary, spinning along as dust on the wing feathers of a bird, scattered and lost when flapped. The heavens ever alter. The aura flows on. Sky and air full of unseen dark mirror the mood below. The earth's bemused expression changes from week to week, year to year, seeming to reproach. But no, earth has no look, no sigh, no determination, no endpoint, no result, no creation or destruction. Like a lunatic's long walk, it goes forth and backward at once, stepping. Eternity is procedure. Time, a little hop. Loss, its color. All things pale and fade, and return cleansed for a while. The succession of native plants now altered. The seasonal crops can't grow as expected, rather otherwise or not at all. The flocks of birds and swarms of bugs come to sweeter silences, reduced locomotion. Fewer is calmer, space enlarged. By water courses, we wonder. So that's just a little bit from Nature, which is a sustained prose work. It's about 80 pages or something like that. Yeah, 65, 68 pages. So now I'm going to read from the book that Richard was talking about that's just out. Nature came out in March from Tumba Press, and I'm really grateful to Lynn Haginian and at Tumba for publishing Nature. And this one is from Lavender Ink. And the cover picture here is a painting by the calligrapher and painter in Berkeley, Kaz Tanahashi, who's a real treasure, a translator of Dogen and an good old friend of mine. And so Richard already described this text. It's a longer text. It's a pandemic poem, really. I wrote it entirely during the pandemic, and amazingly, although I was planning to write, I had a scheme for writing it long before the pandemic, and then the pandemic happened, creating time so that I could write it, and also kind of suddenly a way of writing it because I had the pandemic to be thinking about and experiencing. So I'm going to read at length from this one, some sustained sections. Neither alive nor dead, inert on its own till cell appear, with living activity to latch onto, then commandeer using chemical mechanisms of living to reproduce mightily. There may be mistakes, some cast off, but there are then many of them, and still more. repeating pullulation, its madness of the king who yet knows the truth in human heart, the greed, the fear, the horror, arrogance, blindness, swagger, the nonsense, and rages on in defense of self and realm, repeating pullulation, some cast off, but so very many pullulating, repeating array against them, massive forces causing great consternation among the ranks of monastics in cells who come daily together in harmonious prayer to pray for them as they fall, so many crossing London Bridge at twilight under cloudy skies, moon obscured, their bodies piled high in streets. The government secretly digs mass graves, but it is counterproductive. For the dead do not die. They continue repeating to pullulate by other means, other lives. The mutation's unsuccessful. If it kills its host, it must do only enough damage to go on repeating, to preserve such particularity of life. Any years are early years, and all years are occasions for recalling and falling into gaps, nothing in gaps. This is the way to write an address. When they were engaged, she said, "We are happy." When they were married, she said, "We are happy." Pregnant, we are happy. Giving birth, we are happy. They talked about everything. This is not what was said. They did not talk about disinterested obligation. They did not talk about pleasantness and circumstances. I do not mean to say there was conversation. I do not organize a revision. I declare that there was no need of criticism, that there was no criticism, that there was no breathing. There was breathing. And the nearness of trees and human subservience in the face of unheard calling. Step up to moral philosophy as a way of life, a way to eat distributed food on a daily basis, eating and sleeping, necessary activities, breathing, walking, speaking, like a bow crossing strings, flower melodies, especially sweet in early quiet spring, the many and the few, the greater and the lesser, the good, the bad, the guilty, and the just, wander together in crimson weather, awaiting tigers. Virus took the land from under us, open like an umbrella, enclosing us within, sheltering in place, alone and together. Inside we waited, while outside, rain and blue skies alternated. We did not know when to die and when to insist on our need. Virus took the chairs and tables, the doors, the woodwork. We walked gingerly about, staying clear as virus paused, then rushed again up the scale of dismal notes, then smiled, then frowned, then rushed again, looking up and down. Virus swelled us to dizziness, neither laughed nor cried, brought us to sighs, and we died against our judgments. It hurt a while, but left a certain quiet in our eyes. Skipping ahead many pages in the text. Strong storm today with wind and pelting rain and sheets going left to right. Sea a shroudy white and steel gray. Now all that stopped and all's white gray. The air The sea calmer now, mist in trees, headlands, rocks pale and ghostly in distance. Bright outside this morning. Sun blazing over ocean so you can't look at it. Too bright. With blazing yellow ball and center and hazy steam rising from deck railing and towies hopping on railing, but flitting off fat ones, the conception of the world finally. Terrified by time, its swiftness in a life, which is truly frightening. Time eats matter, flesh. Where are we going? Bright, lovely day, sun hot yellow over sea, a pleasure after so many rainy days. Last night coming home up highway, car hit by young woman in truck, swerving around curve in my lane, straight for me, nowhere to veer, caught, car up against hillside going north, whack! Airbag explodes. Recollected in tranquility, in pop and smoke puff, metal crunching. Did this happen in time? But was still alive. Young woman trapped, scared inside, but in a moment crawled out, driver's side window upraised. 4 tow trucks, 2 fire engines on the scene. Bright sun on page now. It's hard to write or read in bright sunlight. All that light destroys the illusion of words being about something other than light. Days float by quickly and full of activity. Can't remember what happened after all those rainy days, fair and warm, check deposited in bank, doctor's visit, garbage out, cleans, dishes, long discussion about our relationship. He's perplexed, but looks up at stars at night and settles down. He's struggling and makes it worse in thinking it over carefully, the curse of being too smart. And she's overwhelmed with her son, who's complicated because of the divorce, and she doesn't want to make any mistakes and knows she will. So we discussed this and discussed it. Discussions were into the night, but he keeps interrupting himself, going off track in long tangents, stories of his life as an orphan, long ago elsewhere, memories, reveries. He wonders, was it him all this happened to, or some other man he's been tricked into thinking was himself? In a dream, people crawl upward on sheer cliff face toward warm, safe opening they'll reach if they don't fall. Bedrooms of boredom and doom. This is a crime, so I must be a criminal. I recall my guilt. It is there I need only turn in its direction. It palpitates in me, the caverns of my conduct. It takes peace and quiet sometimes to learn one thing so you can forget it. It's as if he's saying, I don't belong here, but I'll never leave. There near the stair where he shot himself, leaving a note, though his suicide was said to be spontaneous, that was a poem addressed to a lover, far away across political boundaries, the feeling of slipping. History comes in eddies. Things float, sink, bob up, but never crest or break. That's what he did not know, and conflated it with love's redemptive quality. His first and second mistakes. After he explained his theory of determinacy to Napoleon, the emperor said, and what do you make of God, Monsieur Laplace? To which he is said to have replied, Sire, I have no need of this hypothesis. And she was sure again now, as she had been for years, that he did not care or care sufficiently to bridge the gap inside her caring enough that she'd feel whole while he was fixed as he had ever been since youth on whatever it was he felt to do to bring forth what was in him he felt was not that, but rather a call of the world faintly heard or not heard, yet somehow seized, and surprisingly to be expressed so. Fixed on that, he was unable at times to engage in normal human congress, a fact she took to mean, even after many years, that it was against her worth to herself, her whole family. She felt disregarded in that, and they were now all gone, dead, all of them. That had formed her, occupied her now, and they quaked at this time with her being ignored in this way. Disregarded, she must defend them so as to keep them alive, which she did in withdrawing, not speak of it if speaking spoke only out of this feeling, while he, feeling as always invisible in some literal sense of the word, as if world went by as scenery in train's window, a train at night when nothing to be seen but only sense of movement, that there were scenes passing by, landscapes, but couldn't see them in black window. And he was watching from another world, and so could himself not be seen. Even to himself, he could not be an object to take pleasure or displeasure in, but only a point, not even in space, but in mind. So that the others who were in fact there in some way he could appreciate deserved all his care. But of course, he was never able to give such care, for he wasn't there at all in a way capable of administering it. So his failure of caring was total, while she, not knowing how this was so, in him, took it to heart for her own way of looking at things, had her own yawning interiorities, and all around them the darkness, not any literal darkness, for the 19th century sun shone on perfectly shaped sycamore trees in the formal park, matching and aligned perfectly, but the darkness of space itself, or of time, or of being that flashes out so fast, it could be said metaphorically to be darkness. And days pass that way, years and decades of misunderstanding. For how could understanding be possible in such a situation? And what could understanding be? Who understands what in such flux of fractured emotion? And he felt this inward urge toward perfection, this certain vision of it, an image of it like the garden, but even the garden wasn't perfect, was proof enough that God must be, or the perfect horizon in his mind that projected critique, that showed at all points his own imperfection to be total, yet caused him to express himself, striving on or out or up or in crude prepositions, all misleading, made it so clearly to be so. God, which was at least a life, but was it he or she, him, or was it her that felt what might have been a feeling between them that wasn't theirs? Did she feel what she felt because he felt what he felt? Or was it her feeling that activated his, and such feeling flowed back and forth between them, and each of them felt alone in the feeling that seemed so private, or blamed one another for the feeling that seemed so imposed? And in the end, what is a feeling but the mind's word scrap registered in the body and repeated and interpreted in a span of time in God's mind? Once we met my brother. He was ringing a bell. He needed an umbrella, but he would not buy it. I sent him one. Oh yes, the people are kind. They all drink together. Even now. No, not now. Did you see the date palm? Did you see the fig tree? And I'll read one last section. It's extended like the previous one. Testing, testing, testing. We are forever testing. We are never testing. We are testing, but we are not testing enough. We are not testing as much as the others are testing. They are testing. They test every day. They test everyone. They test those who need to be tested and those who do not need to be tested. We ought to be testing more than we are. In other places where they are testing everyone, they have plenty of test kits. They are widely distributed. They had them all along. They were prepared with many test kits. They are testing and testing with their test kits, and they are receiving test results. They are amassing data. The more you test, the more data you amass, and the more data you amass, the more you understand. The more you test and amass and understand, the more you will be able to decide what to do. Testing yields results. Results collated provide data, but we do not have enough test kits for the testing we ought to do, and we do not have enough materials to make the test kits effective, so we do not have enough data. We do not know what is going on. We do not know what to do. It is wild. It is out of control that there is this that is going on all around us, and we do not know where it is or what it is or how much of it there is because there are not enough test kits and test materials and not enough data. So we fly blind, or we do not fly at all. When there are enough test kits and materials, enough PPE, so those administering tests can be protected so that they can administer tests safely, enough PPE so that workers will not fall sick, tending the sick, enough amassed data, then data can be charted onto graphs. We can measure rates of increase or decrease, and we can know where the disease is and where it is not, where it is strong and where weak. We can see hotspots. We can see where it spreads and how it spreads. We can track social networks of association and transmission. We can use phone data, GPS data, CCTV, all sorts of data. We can make discoveries, uncovering from out of the dark and into the light. The data will shed in all directions. We can see numbers as light. We can feel numbers as warmth, taste and touch numbers. And each data point stands for a case. Each case, a person, a case in point, illuminated data point. We can chart and contemplate, we can decide the best things to do, the most effective things to do, and how to do them, and where to do them. This is unprecedented. This is unprecedented. Unprecedented. Although it has happened many times before this way and worse, but that was long ago. But each time it is unprecedented. This amount of dying or being dying or more, we have not seen anything like it before. We have seen many, many things, but like this, we have seen nothing quite like this. We do not know what to think of it, how to think of it, what to make of it. We think of it, we make of it something alive every day. We cannot interpret it. It defies our interpretation. It seems even monstrous to interpret it. How could we even begin to dream of how to interpret it? Perhaps we should all be wearing masks. They say wear masks. Wear them at all times, not for yourself, but for the others. It will prevent you from breathing onto others. It will help you to remember not to touch your face. It will prevent you transmitting a disease you may not know you have, but you do have it. But there are not enough masks. There ought to be masks available everywhere. How is it possible? There are not enough masks. Such a simple thing, a mask, a cloth mask. How is this possible? There simply are not enough masks. But maybe it is not such a good thing to wear a mask when we know, or when we are told, that there are not enough masks for those who need masks. The doctors and nurses, the first responders need masks, but there are not enough masks for them. So when we wear masks, does this mean we are withholding masks from those who need them most? Though we are not intending to do this, this is not our wish to do this yet. Are we hoarding masks which we didn't even need? They don't even help anyway, we are told, but also we are told they are necessary. They are vitally important for others. It is important for others, not for ourselves, that we wear masks. You can make your own mask. It is so simple. It can be done this way. It can be done that way. There are many ways to make masks. You can use various materials, but if you make a mask, it might warm and moisten with your breathing, harboring bacteria. It might be dangerous wearing a mask. It might be putting others in jeopardy, yourself in jeopardy. It might give a false sense of security, cause you and others to wash the hands less, sanitize less, disinfect less, and then the mask would be in this way counterproductive, even dangerous. It could thus be irresponsible, even cruel, thoughtlessly cruel to wear a mask. But we are told we must wear masks at all times. In these times, others, we must think of others, because now it is clear that thinking of others is thinking of ourself, and thinking of ourself is thinking of others. Because if you get sick, others get sick. And if others are sick, so will you also be sick. They will die, you will die, we will all die, but we can't die together. We will die alone. In order for them not to die alone, also, you must not die alone. You must wear a mask or not wear a mask, test or not be tested. Maybe you would like to be tested, but the test kit administered to you might well be the test kit so much more needed by another. Let us only test those who need the test, for there are not enough test kits. But now there are plenty of masks. So many manufacture masks available at every store counter, online, everywhere you see ads for masks. So much production of other things now has become instead production of masks. We are all wearing masks. We have whole wardrobes of masks in various styles, colors, fabrics, configurations, but some say it is foolish to wear a mask. It is merely political to wear a mask, a badge of honor. It is not to wear a mask to show how you are, who you are, an independent person, one not afraid of silly little invisible things. How can such things hurt you? Or if they do, not so bad. Really, it's not so bad. No worries. The hospitals are crowded. The hospitals are very, very crowded. There are beds in the corridors. The doctors, the nurses, the respiratory therapists do not have masks. They need masks. They need basic equipment they do not have. Where is this equipment? Why does it not exist where it is most needed? How is it this is happening now as it is happening? Where are the ventilators? Why are there not ventilators where they are needed, and for the patient on the ventilator who is unconscious and almost for all intents and purposes dead? And the ventilator is breathing for her. She cannot breathe. She is biding her time unconscious, and yet there is no treatment for this disease. She must be breathed by the machine, and maybe the disease will go away finally and she will be well, but maybe she will be breathed by the ventilator for a time, and then she will die, and the ventilator will not have mattered at all. But ventilators are desperately needed. Where are the ventilators? Why have we not heard about ventilators coming? Where are these ventilators? Before this, we never even heard of ventilators. They are rarely used. Is this all actually happening? Is it happening as they say it is happening? Is anything ever happening as anyone says it is happening? And is it actually happening? Have you seen evidence of its happening, actually happening as they say? Or is it perhaps some kind of hoax, a government hoax perpetrated by our enemies to make us look bad, to cause us to panic, to make us look foolish, to make us seem as if caught with our pants down, as if dummies, incompetent. We didn't do the sane and basic things anyone would do to manage things well, to prepare as anyone would prepare for such a crisis, when everybody knew so clearly, everyone knew clearly, obviously, that is, those who understand such things, study such things, are trained in such things, experienced in them, whose job it is to take care of such things, that this would happen. It was always only a matter of time. Thanks for listening to all that, and thanks again for coming to the reading.
All right, all right. Thank you, thank you. I want to thank both our fine poets, Lyndon Norton and Norman Fischer, and thank them also for striking such rich sparks off each other. So here comes Joyce to sign us off.
Hey there. Thank you so much for that wonderful reading. Thank you all for joining us. And I just want to remind you that in the chat box, there are links to these amazing books for Whiteout and by Lyndon Norton and Nature by Norman Fischer. Go to bookshop.org/list/poetry-flash-readings. And for Norman Fischer's new Lavender Ink book, please go to Small Press Distribution, spdbooks.org. Thank you so much.